Hi, Craig here, and welcome to episode 10 of season 3 of this vlog from my tiny tropical garden. In this week's video, I'm going to be planting out some tender tropical plants, as well as updating you on how some of the existing plants in my garden are doing. Finally, it's that long-awaited key time of year when nighttime temperatures are frequently staying above 10 degrees Celsius. And this time of the year comes at different points for all of us, depending where in the world we live, or even where in a country we live. And I'm lucky, I'm in the southwest of the UK and by the coast, so the nights get warmer quickly. Which means I can finally start planting some exotic plants, like this CANNA IRIDIFLORA, with its green leaves and unusual pink drooping flowers. I didn't grow this one last year, so this is new for me. And this CANNA CLEOPATRA, with its notable purple streaked leaves. I grew this one last year, but I got it quite late in the summer at a plant fair. I didn't get a chance to see it flower, so hopefully this year I'll see its multicoloured flowers. And just beside that, I've planted my first ginger, HEDYCHIUM tara. Again, I grew this last year, but there was no sign of a flower, so hopefully we'll get some this year. I've also planted HEDYCHIUM GARDENARIUM with bright orange flowers, and this HEDYCHIUM GREENII, which I did grow last year and did get it to flower, and it had beautiful orange flowers, and it's got a really nice coppery underside to its leaves. And to pick up those dark purple streaks in the leaves of the CANNA CLEOPATRA, I've planted this CANNA Dark Night next to it, which I've grown for several years in the tiny tropical garden, and they've done well for me. All of these cannas should create lots of lush foliage, and I want some flowers to come up between them, so I've planted this SALVIA CONFERTIFLORA, which I grew from a cutting that I took last autumn. I think it's got really cool big leaves, and it's got bright red long flower spikes that I think look great in a tropical garden setting. I think there's a chance, fingers crossed, that this year could be the year that the tiny tropical garden gets its canopy. And we've been trying to achieve a canopy in the tiny tropical garden since we started it. It will cast dappled shade, protect the garden from coastal winds, and act as a bit of a heat blanket to hold the temperature higher in our garden. And our canopy will eventually be made up of deciduous and evergreen trees and shrubs. An evergreen shrub like this PSEUDOPANAX is great with its broad tropical leaves. And the evergreen canopy plant that's been in our garden the longest is the loquat tree, which I think is really starting to come into its own with its enormous corrugated evergreen leaves. Hopefully this will get up nice and tall this year, above head height, and that canopy is going to cast shade over parts of the garden so we can grow plants like begonias and impatiens, which I just couldn't grow normally, and I love the lush, jungly, partial shade plants. It's weird, isn't it? If we've got full sun, we want shade. But if we've got a shady garden, we want full sun. The grass is always greener on the other side. For me, shade-loving plants really do float my boat, and I know everybody is different. But it means that I can now plant out things like this Impatiens, commonly called the Congo cockatoo, and this other Impatiens, which is orange flowering, which I haven't managed to get my hands on for a while, and I first saw it in Mike Clifford's garden in one of his open days. The nighttime temperatures are only just warm enough for me to plant out these plants, but I do have some fleece at hand, and I'm covering them if there are any threats of cold nights, just until we get those warm, balmy summer nights again. In the narrow bed that flanks one side of our garden path, we've accidentally created a theme of pink, purple and blue flowers. And this native pulmonaria, with its mix of coloured flowers, fits into this scheme perfectly. And although it's native, it's great for pollinators, and I think it looks really good when planted underneath those glossy FUSCHIA leaves. And the next plant that fits into this accidental colour theme is this fuchsia GENII. GENII? However you want to pronounce it. It's got golden leaves and looks really good next to our variegated grass and variegated FUSCHIAs. And I've added this teeny tiny evergreen Brazilian fuchsia, with its hot pink magenta flowers. I think the contrast of the tiny flowers and tiny leaves on this fuchsia, which I've grown from a cutting, will really help to show off the big jungly leaves in the garden. And a really nice exotic looking plant that I've been keeping indoors until now is this Justicia CARNEA. It's got lovely magenta plumes of flowers and dark purple undersides to its leaves. It grows quite shrubby, and this one's quite leggy, so I've already cut it back and taken cuttings, and I'm keeping it in a pot. As I said, we're only just warm enough at night, so if there is any threat of cold weather, I can bring it in. And our enormous purple bloomed clematis, shown here flowering last summer, is clambering back up through the evergreen shrubs that we use as windbreaks. Now laurel don't look too bad in a tropical garden, but they are quite dull in the summer months, so we like to let flowering vines scramble up through the branches. Like this Ipomea, which we've grown from seed just a couple of weeks ago, and its bright red flowers should look really good in one of our laurel shrubs, just to spruce them up a bit in the summer months. And growing plants from seeds or plugs is a great way to get a lot of new plants into your garden relatively cheaply. Like this TYPHINA, we bought this as tiny plug plants a couple of years back, and look how big it's getting already. I think this year is going to be the year this plant gets nice and big and architectural for us with its gigantic leaves. And new shoots keep emerging from this Persicaria purple fantasy, which has been in the ground all winter. I think it looks really good when underplanting something like that TYPHINA with the massive leaves. Now, if you're a subscriber, you'll know that I've been doing some work on the stream recently, and one of those jobs was taking all of those pebbles out and just laying them to the edge of the stream. But I think it looks too grey now, and I'd rather green up the edges of the stream and make it look like a lush jungle stream. And the first true tropical plant that I'm using to green up the edges of the stream is this Alocasia, which will grow to have enormous glossy green leaves held upright on their stems. I think this is one of the most exotic looking streamside plants you can get. In time, I'd like to add more ferns, but like I say, I need more shade. Come on, canopy. The evergreen backdrop in our raised bed is grown a treat, and we've got a nice contrast now between different leaf shapes, colours and sizes. And recently, you might remember, we took this Schefflera taiwaniana out from its pot and put it into the ground. Now I was scared. I was keeping it in a pot through fear that we might move and I couldn't take this plant with me. But I am so happy that I set it free. By putting it in the ground, the leaves have got bigger, darker, and it's putting out this new flush of growth. I urge you, set your plants free, take them out of the pots, be brave. And the third new Impatiens that I've added to the garden is another that I've grown from a cutting, Impatiens tinctoria. This grows to be a relatively large shrub that can die back in cold winters, and it has these amazing white flowers with a red throat that I think look a bit like an orchid. Our shade-loving podophyllum Spotty Dotty is doing alright, and that mulch of coffee grounds that we put around the base to stop the slugs isn't doing the best job. The snails seem to love it. And the Anceti banana that I recently potted up is springing back to life. I recently made a how-to video for this plant, how to grow it, how to store it dry over winter, and then bring it back out in the spring. I'll link it for you. But I'm glad there's signs of growth, because this top was mouldy when I took it out of the shed. And my humble little agave, it's been in this pot, outdoors, throughout winters, for 3 years. I have given this plant no love, just pure abuse, and it seems to be doing just fine. I don't really feature these plants in the video that much, but I might get a bit more into succulents and agaves this year. We'll see. I'm really happy that the time of year has come where I can start planting out some more tropical plants. And I've been growing a lot of them carefully over the winter months from cuttings that I took last year. I'm all about saving money where I can, growing plants from cuttings or from seed. I'd love to know what all of you have been doing in your gardens at this time of year. A lot of us have been spending a lot of time in them. Comment below and let me know. And don't forget, if you want to join the Tropical Tribe, hit subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.